They called it the Vatrax Accord, some polished interstellar agreement signed by trembling hands under the illusion of unity. 100 species, all gathered under a single banner after the Zareth War, when the galaxy nearly collapsed under its own weight. Humanity hadn't even been invited to that table, not until we pulled their asses out of extinction. No one ever talks about that part. No statues, no medals, no gratitude. Just silence. I remember what the sky looked like back then. Red from the fires in orbit, black from the debris. The Archy's fleet was collapsing and the entire system screamed for help. And Earth answered. We answered. With everything we had left. I was there. I saw it happen. And I watched as the bastards left us behind afterward. No medships for our wounded. No supplies. Just a message of thanks buried under layers of diplomatic garbage. They thought the debt was forgotten. That humanity would lick its wounds, crawl back into its dirtball planet, and stay quiet like the good little species we were supposed to be. They were wrong. Dead wrong. 27 years. That's how long it took us to get back. Not because we were rebuilding, but because we were becoming something else. Something sharper, leaner, hungrier. And now, we're ready. My name doesn't matter. I've changed it too many times. But the galaxy will remember what I did. What we did. Because this time, we're not coming to help. We're coming to collect. They don't see it yet. Not fully. The trade worlds think it's just an economic shift. The Cathari hive families think Earth's rise is quaint. The Januar conglomerate just sanctioned our trade routes again. Old patterns, old arrogance. Let them think that. It buys us time, because orbiting their most protected planets, right now, without their sensors catching wind, is the fleet they forgot we could even build. And in the heart of it all sits Project Revenant, the weapon we built with our own pain, forged from Earth's betrayal, designed for one thing only, reminding the galaxy that a debt unpaid doesn't just sit quietly. It festers. It grows teeth. I stood on the command deck of the Vigil's End, the flagship of the Revenant line. Cold steel under my boots. No comfort here, just purpose. Status? I asked. Fleet formation is holding, said Lieutenant Brandt. Young. Too young maybe, but his hatred ran deep. He lost his father on Erebus Prime, left to bleed out while the Allied forces evacuated their own first. That kind of pain turns a man into a weapon. Communications? I pressed. Silent. Ghost mode active. No pings from any quadrant. Good. We were close now. The Arcus stronghold, once the epicenter of the galactic rescue mission, now the bloated capital of hypocrites, was a mere jump away. Prepare the payload, I said. Brandt looked at me. Full scale? All of it. A beat passed. No questions. Just a nod. We weren't here to send a message. We were the message. The bridge was quiet as the crew moved. Every one of them had scars. Every one of them had buried someone because of the betrayal. None of them wore medals. Just the emblem burned into their right sleeves, a broken chain over a blood-red star. Outside, space whispered like it always did, cold, vast, and indifferent. But not for long, because humanity was done asking. We remembered the debt, and we came back with interest. Space doesn't scream, it just waits. That was the first lesson I learned out there, long before Earth decided to stop being polite. The second lesson? No one respects the hand that saved them, only the one that reminds them who has the power now. As the Vigil's End crept closer to Arcus space, the crew held to silence like it was sacred. Not out of fear, not anymore. We had passed that years ago. What held us now was focus, the kind that sharpens men into something primal, something old. Final approach in 7 minutes, Brandt said behind me, voice low. His knuckles were white around the rail he held onto. Any pings? I asked. He shook his head. Nothing yet. Their early warning systems are too confident. Good. We'd spent 2 years infiltrating their outer comm buoys, rewriting protocols, masking our emissions to mimic long-range trader vessels. They were still watching for the old Earth, scattered, struggling, slow. They hadn't realized we'd studied their blindness better than they'd studied our weakness. "Set all units to black mode," I ordered. "No transmissions unless it's kill switch priority." Brant relayed the command. The deck lights dimmed to red. Somewhere far beneath our feet, Revenant Protocol finished booting. I could feel the pulse of its core humming through the ship, like a second heartbeat. Every ship in our armada had one, power enough to level a moon. Not just weapons, judgments, but we weren't here to destroy indiscriminately. No, that'd be easy. We were here to remind them. My cabin was small by fleet commander standards. No decorations, no flags, just a steel desk, 2 hard chairs, and a sealed case welded to the wall, untouched since the day Earth signed the ceasefire. Inside it were photos of the Titan's fall, the cruiser we lost during the last engagement. 72 human crew abandoned by the Vitrax Alliance when the Cathari demanded withdrawal from Sector 19. They called it tactical redeployment. We called it betrayal. My brother died on that ship. So did Brant's father. So did thousands of others. And still we came back from it. That's what they never understood about us. Humans don't forget. I opened the case. The photo sat there, burned along the edges, blood smeared across the bottom right. It had been retrieved by a scavenger team. 3 months after the battle. All that remained of the Titan's fall was scrap and silence. Beneath the photo was the last message broadcasted before blackout. I played it every time before combat. A man's voice crackled through, ragged and breaking. "We were told they'd cover us. We're holding the line. Requesting evac. Anyone? We're still here." The last word always cut deepest. "Please." It never came. Not the help. Not the rescue. Not even the decency of acknowledgement. They buried the battle under redacted reports and diplomatic complications. 6 minutes. I moved back to the bridge. The Vigil's End coasted with her fleet just behind her. 12 Revenant-class warships and 16 Shadow Runners, smaller but deadlier in close range, all cloaked, all silent. Our target wasn't just Arcus. It was the Pinnacle, the central orbital station above Arcus Prime, headquarters of the Council. Every major power that betrayed us was represented there, from the bloated Voth diplomats to the smug, snake-eyed Cathari clan heads. And now, they would see what Earth had become. "Arsenal status?" I asked. "Weapons cold," said Brant, "but Revenant is preloaded. Targets are locked. All ships are in sync." I nodded. "On my mark, break silence. Broadcast Revenant Signal Prime." He turned to me. "You sure about this?" "I've been sure for 27 years. The moment it began, there was no going back. "Execute." A single command sent through quantum compression channels. Every ship in the fleet lit up, not visibly, not audibly, but in code. The Revenant signal was never just an order. It was a declaration. It reached Arcus systems in seconds. And then, the stars flinched. Every orbital station blinked to life. Emergency sensors screamed across a dozen frequencies. Artificial intelligence cores triggered lockdowns. But it was already too late. We were inside the walls. Vigil's End burst from its shroud, followed by the rest of the fleet. The illusion dropped. And suddenly, there was Earth steel staring down the pride of the galaxy. The Pinnacle tried to launch defense drones, but our code had rewritten them a month ago. They turned inward and blew their own launch bays to hell. Fire bloomed in the darkness. Screams echoed across the comms. And we? We didn't say a word. The face of the Council High Lord appeared on our main screen. pale blue skin, gold robes, antlers that made him look more regal than real. "You are violating a galactic treaty," he barked. "This is an act of war." "No," I cut in. "This is a collection." He blinked. "What?" "You made a promise. Earth came when you called. We bled, we buried, and you walked away. You didn't just forget the debt. You spat on the graves of those who paid it." "This is madness." I stepped forward, looking into his eyes through the screen. "No. This is memory. And humans? We have a long one." Then I gave the signal. A single Revenant warhead launched, not at their cities, not at their people, but straight through the core of the Pinnacle's comm relay. Clean, surgical. The station went dark. The Council was now isolated. No way to reach their fleet, no way to call reinforcements, and for the first time in a generation, they were alone. We boarded the Pinnacle within 10 minutes. Dropships swarmed it like hornets, punching through hull plating, flooding the inside with armed human soldiers dressed in black, silent, methodical, furious. I led the charge into the council chamber myself. They expected shouting. They expected speeches. They got judgment. I stepped onto the marble floor, gun still cold, blade sheathed at my side. The chamber's glass ceiling above us showed the chaos outside, fires across the station, Earth ships locking down every path of retreat. The High Lord was still standing. So were half a dozen diplomats. The Cathari ambassador, smug even now, hissed as I approached. "You wouldn't dare harm council representatives," he said, chest puffed. "Not unless you want the wrath of every—" I shot him in the leg. He dropped screaming. "Anyone else want to finish that sentence?" No one spoke. Good. I turned to the High Lord. "We're not conquerors. We don't want your planets, your tech, your credits." He scowled. "Then what the hell do you want?" Acknowledgement. Silence. "I want you to admit what happened at Erebus, at Titan's Fall, at Arc 7. I want you to tell your people that Earth saved your sorry alliance, and you spat on us for it. I want every schoolchild in the galaxy to learn our name with respect, not pity, not fear, respect. You'll never get that." I nodded slowly. "Then we'll burn this whole damn station to the ground, and we'll do the same to every council world that dares fly that alliance flag." "You're monsters," he said. "No," I said. "You made us this. You just didn't expect the monsters to remember." They signed the declaration that night, on their knees, with trembling hands. Every network in the galaxy broadcasted it live. Earth's debt repaid, in full, with interest. The humans who were left behind, the soldiers who died unacknowledged, they finally had their justice. But even as the ink dried, I felt nothing. No triumph, no joy, just a cold emptiness. Because vengeance doesn't heal. It only ends, and sometimes that's enough. As the vigil's end pulled away from the ruined station, I looked out the viewport one last time. Fires still burned in orbit. Ships still hung in shattered silence. The stars were still watching. Let them watch. Let them remember. Because we did what no other species dared to do. We repaid the debt. And the galaxy finally understood. When humans come to collect, mercy isn't in the contract. The flames had barely cooled before the hypocrisy started crawling back in. They called it a historic reconciliation, paraded it across every galactic channel as if they'd come to the table willingly. Not a single word about the fleet that hovered just outside sensor range, locked and loaded. Not a whisper about the guns we pointed at their temples. They spun it like they were the victims who had chosen diplomacy over destruction. That was fine by me. Let them lie to their people. Let them pretend they still had control. The truth was carved into the wreckage of the Pinnacle, floating in orbit like a monument no one wanted to look at. The truth was in the eyes of every soldier who stood silent as the Council signed our terms with bloodied hands. The truth was in us. what we'd become. We were back aboard the Vigil's End when the final transmission came in. "The Council has ratified the Human Restoration Agreement," said Brandt, reading from the encrypted report. "Effective immediately, Earth is granted unrestricted Tier 1 access to galactic trade, military technology, and diplomatic recognition. Reparations to be delivered within 7 cycles." I stood at the viewport, staring at the ruined station behind us. Chunks of metal floated silently, drifting like broken promises. "Anything about the fallen?" I asked. Brandt was quiet for a moment. "A brief acknowledgement. 6 lines. Says they regret the loss of brave human lives during previous conflicts." I clenched my jaw. 6 lines for 70,000 graves. He looked at me. "We made them sign it. That's what matters." Was it? We'd come for recognition, for justice, for a seat at the table that they'd once slammed in our face. And we got it. But what we paid along the way, what we lost, couldn't be signed back into existence. A few days later, we landed on Erebus Prime. It used to be a bloodbath, a mining colony that got caught in the middle of the last war. Now it was a graveyard. No flags, no monuments, just rows of makeshift tombs, names etched into rusting metal plates. Names most of the galaxy would never speak. But we knew them. Every soldier who came with me had someone here. We walked among the graves in silence, helmets off, weapons holstered. No war here, just memory. I found my brother's plate near the back. Davin. Simple, short, misspelled. The Council hadn't even bothered to get it right when they submitted casualty reports. I told him not to sign up, I said to no one in particular. Told him to stay back, wait it out. But he believed in what Earth stood for back then, said we had to prove we belonged. Brandt knelt beside his father's grave, brushing dirt off the plate. He didn't speak, just stared. Behind us, the rest of the soldiers stood in rows, watching, waiting. This wasn't a ceremony. There weren't any hymns or salutes or polished speeches, just the silence we'd earned. The silence we owned now. We left our unit insignias behind, burned patches placed on the graves. No medals, just that black-red emblem, a broken chain over a bleeding star. That was all we had left to give. The galaxy moved fast after that. Humans were suddenly the newest power brokers. We were offered trade alliances, tech swaps, even seats on regional councils. The same smug diplomats who ignored our calls for help were now tripping over themselves to send envoys, smiling with too many teeth. Some of our own people called it a victory, but I knew better. Because when power changes hands, the next war doesn't begin with bombs. It starts with whispers. It began in the outer fringe. A human freighter went missing en route to a Cathari-controlled shipping lane. Official reports claimed engine failure. But when our scouts pulled the wreck from the void, we found bullet holes in the pilot's skull and Cathari branding carved into the hull. I stood in the command room, holding the report. "Do they think we're idiots?" I asked. Brandt looked exhausted. "They're testing us, seeing how far they can push before we snap. They think we won't, that we're still playing by their rules." "Well, we're not, right?" I didn't answer immediately, because deep down I wasn't sure anymore. There was a line we hadn't crossed yet. Full-blown war, extermination. We'd held back just enough to be respected without becoming monsters in full. But maybe they were counting on that hesitation. Maybe that's why the attacks kept happening. It wasn't just the fringe. Human colonies started vanishing, one by one. Communications severed, transport cut off, whole settlements going dark. Every time we investigated, we got more excuses from the Council. Internal issues, local rebellions, pirate interference. Lies. They were too scared to attack us directly, but they weren't done bleeding us, so I gave the order. Operation Iron Remembrance. Not a military campaign, a reckoning. We didn't nuke planets, we didn't glass cities. We sent a message, one world at a time. Every colony that disappeared, we traced the coordinates, tracked the origin of the last ping, and hit their supply chains like a goddamn plague. Fuel depots, food processors, comm towers, obliterated. Not one civilian was harmed, but we choked them out. And every time, we left behind the same thing. A single drone with one sentence recorded in 50 languages. We remember our dead. It worked, at first. The attacks stopped. For a while, the Council even began to panic. Some of the minor powers started siding with us out of fear, pulling away from the Cathari influence. They thought they were next. But then, the galaxy did what it always does. It adapted. They stopped using official channels. They began hiring proxies, mercs, pirates, warlords, anyone desperate or angry enough to strike at us with deniability. And that's when I realized something I hadn't before. They would never let us in. No matter how loud we screamed, no matter how much blood we spilled or history we rewrote, the other races would always see us as the outsiders who climbed out of the dirt and reached too far, too fast. We weren't their equals. We were their mistake. And now they were trying to erase that mistake quietly, one shadow at a time. It was Brant who finally asked the question we were all avoiding. Do we burn it down? We were in the war room, the map of the galactic zones projected across the table. Human space was growing, but it was surrounded by potential enemies. Dozens of systems still loyal to the old order. Hundreds of neutral worlds just waiting to be bought. Do we take the war to them before they come for us again? He asked. Strike first this time. End the threat. I stared at the projection. So many stars. So many lives caught in the middle. We came to repay a debt, I said. But now, maybe we're the ones writing new ones. You think that makes us no better than them? No, I said. I think it makes us honest. He exhaled slowly. So what now? I looked him dead in the eye. Now we finish what they started. Not for revenge, not even for justice, for survival. The galaxy was watching again. But this time it wasn't with fear. It was with calculation. They were wondering if the humans were tired yet. If we'd crawl back into our hole after getting what we wanted. If we were done. But they didn't understand. We were never here for peace. We were here for permanence. They tried to erase us. Now we'd etch our name into the bones of every star that dared forget us. And the next time they whispered our name, it wouldn't be in fear. It would be in surrender. We never wanted to rule the galaxy. We just wanted to stop burying our people. But power has a gravity of its own. Once you step into that orbit, it drags you deeper, pulls until you can't tell if you're still fighting for justice or just feeding the fire so it doesn't go out. And now we were deep. Too deep. It started with the Brinari massacre, a colony on the edge of Neutral Zone 8. Not even a military outpost, just families, engineers, terraformers trying to make rock into home. The transmission came in during a council briefing. No audio, just a live feed. Flames, screaming children, corpses stacked like broken scaffolding. Their attackers had sealed the main dome, lit it from the inside, and let the oxygen feeds turn it into an oven. Over 700 humans. Gone. The killers wore no insignias. No official uniforms. But their gear? Cathari plasma rifles, Voth detonation packs, Nalthis cloaking gear. Cowards didn't even show their faces, just slaughtered and ran. We tracked their ships within hours, slavers, contracted out of the Vanta Reach, a lawless strip of space long denied any official affiliation. But we knew who paid them. They weren't rogue. They were sent. The council? They issued a formal investigation. Another insult. I gathered my command staff in the war room. Brant, stone-faced as ever, colonel dressed, bleeding knuckles from smashing a data terminal. Admiral Senka, quiet, too quiet, calculating. "We strike now," Brandt said without hesitation. "Vanta Reach, all of it. Burn it to ash." Drest nodded. "Let the galaxy know. Human blood has a price, one we collect with fire." Senka finally spoke. "And what do we do about the ones trying to stop it? Because you know some of ours will flinch." She was right. The new generation, politicians, diplomats, Earth-based elites, they were already talking about de-escalation, image management, future alliances. They thought we could talk our way into safety. I'd seen the oven Brennari had become. You can't negotiate with monsters that burn children alive. "We don't just strike," I said. "We cleanse." They went quiet. Drest grinned. "We sent the Revenant fleet, not the whole thing, just enough to send a message. 5 capital ships, 80 Shadow-class interceptors, 2 orbital payloads, each capable of reducing a continent to dust." I didn't go myself. I let Brandt lead it. I trusted him, not because he was moral, because he was merciless. The Vanta Reach didn't last 40 minutes. The first strike hit their shipyards. Plasma ribbons turned entire fleets into glowing wreckage. Then came the raids. Every black site, every shadow station, every rat nest harboring slavers and mercs got gutted. Airlock to airlock. No warnings, no survivors. Our men didn't ask questions. They executed protocols. And when Brandt reached the command dome of the local cartel, he dragged the head slaver out in front of the remaining captives. "You were paid to kill our kind," Brandt said, blade drawn. The slaver spat blood and laughed. "You think this'll scare them?" "No," Brandt replied. "This is just the invoice." He slit the bastard's throat on live feed. Earth's reaction was split clean down the middle. The Veterans Union cheered. The frontier colonies demanded more. But Earth's political class, those who never bled, never lost anything, they panicked. Sanctions were threatened. News networks ran stories about human overreach and galactic stability. Protests flared in the megacities. Suddenly, we weren't saviors anymore. We were the storm, the monster outside the door, the thing that couldn't be controlled. Good. They needed to feel that. Because if they didn't fear us, they'd start planning our funeral all over again. But not all fear is useful. Some of it turns inward. I met with the Earth delegation 3 days after the Reach purge. They sat in their polished chairs, suits neat, words rehearsed. "Commander," one of them began, some pale bureaucrat whose name I didn't bother remembering. "There's growing concern that these operations may undermine our diplomatic gains." "Is that what we're calling the dead children now?" I asked. He shifted uncomfortably. "No, of course not. But retaliation on this scale could—" "Could what?" I snapped. "Make them take us seriously? Because that's the only language they understand, and for once in human history, we're speaking it fluently." Another diplomat leaned forward, a woman with clipped tone and tired eyes. "Commander, we don't question the need for strength. But the optics—" I slammed my hand on the table. "I don't give a damn about optics. I care about corpses." Silence. Then the head of the delegation spoke, calm and patronizing. "We believe Earth should transition to a civilian leadership model. You've done your part, Commander. But it's time to let elected officials guide the next phase." There it was, the coup, wrapped in soft words and paper smiles. I stood. "You can hold your meetings, write your resolutions. Shake hands with the same species that killed your people, but when the next blood hits the dirt, don't call me to clean it up." Then I left, because I knew something they didn't. This wasn't over. It had barely begun. The fractures deepened. On one side, us, the veterans, the outer colonies, the ones who'd fought and bled and buried too many to forget. On the other, Earth's political elite, diplomats, merchants, the comfortable. They wanted peace. We wanted permanence. Then came the New Dawn Rebellion, a human faction based out of Delos III claiming we had gone too far, that the retaliation against Vanta Reach had crossed a moral line. They called for Earth to disband the Revenant fleet. They seized a port, declared independence, said they'd rebuild humanity's image. We gave them a chance. 3 demands. 1. Lay down arms. 2. Surrender leadership. 3. Issue formal apology to the families of Brennari. They refused. So we sent 1 ship, Crucible, Shadow class, silent and sharp. No warning, just a crater where their base used to be. I stood alone on the deck of Vigil's End, watching the stars burn cold in the distance. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel angry anymore either, just hollow. Because I had once believed in something different, not justice, not power, memory, the idea that we could force the galaxy to remember our sacrifice, our worth. But now I realized something darker. They would never remember us for who we were, only for what we became. And maybe that was enough. Senka confronted me later. "You're losing them," she said. "Who?" "Your soul. And theirs." I didn't respond. She stepped closer. "You think fear will protect us? That if we become the monsters, no one will ever hurt us again? Am I wrong?" She looked away. "No, but I think you should ask yourself something." "What?" "What happens when the only people more afraid of us than the enemy are our own?" She left me with that. And I couldn't sleep that night. The next day, a message came through private channel. Encrypted, no sender. But I recognized the voice. Old. Weathered. A man I hadn't heard from in 20 years. "Commander, they're planning something. Earth leadership. A realignment strategy. You're not invited. You're in the way." The message ended with coordinates. A station. Hidden. Off-grid. Near council-controlled territory. The last words chilled me more than the war ever had. "They don't want peace, Commander. They want obedience. And if you won't kneel, they'll put someone in your place who will." The message wouldn't leave my mind. "They'll put someone in your place who will kneel." There was no signature, no timestamp, just the voice, gravelly, burned by time, the kind of voice that had been soaked in war and left out to dry. I knew who it was. Commander Halric, my former superior. Long thought dead, or at least retired somewhere so far off-grid no one cared to look. He was a shadow from the old days, before the Revenant fleet, before the Council betrayal, before Earth turned its back on its own. If Halric was sending warnings, that meant someone was already moving pieces behind our backs. And if they were moving, it was because they thought I was in the way. The coordinates he gave pointed to a dead zone. A quiet little system outside the trade lanes, surrounded by radiation belts and sensor static. No colonies, no official maps. But there was something there, something they didn't want me to see. "Prep a black ship," I ordered Brandt. He raised an eyebrow. "Recon? Alone?" "Small crew, no comms, quiet insertion. Risky. They already think I'm too loud." We left that night. The Gallows flight was small, just a recon-class frigate wrapped in sensor scramblers and hull cooling tech. No weapons, at least none that lit up on scans. Just 2 dropships, 1 backup AI, and a team I trusted with my life. Brandt didn't come. I needed him visible, in command, keeping the fleet on alert in case things went sideways, which I knew they would. Instead, I brought Tenor, a ground ops veteran with no patience for politics, and Alric, a quiet but deadly comms hacker who could cut through encryption like it was butter. The trip took 2 days in silent drift. When we reached the system, We found it, right where the coordinates said. A station, floating in the shadow of a dead gas giant. Small but new, fresh construction, clean solar rings, human-built, no markings, no beacons, no registry. We docked on the dark side, bypassing automated defense signals that weren't even encrypted. That told me they never expected us to come. Fools. Inside, it was quiet. Clean. Too clean. Hallways still smelled of polymer. Lights low and passive. We moved through the corridors like ghosts, Tenor watching our rear, Alric tapping into wall panels. "What is this place?" Tenor muttered. "A research hub, maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. Then we found the central chamber. Or rather, Alric found the files behind it. He pulled them up, slowly, carefully. Whatever this station was doing, they'd tried to bury it under layers of encryption, black budget codes, and false metadata. But Earth made Alric. They should have known better. He froze as the first visuals came online. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. Tenor leaned in. "Are those soldiers?" "No, not soldiers. Replicas. Human soldiers. Cloned, modified, reprogrammed. Dozens of them stood in vertical pods, eyes closed, neural plugs drilled straight into their spines, muscles thicker than natural, limbs reinforced. Some had chrome plating on their skulls. But it wasn't the bodies that made my stomach twist. It was the faces. I knew them. They were ours. Some were modeled after soldiers we'd lost during the wars. Others were alive. People we worked with. One even looked like Brandt. I stepped back. "What is this?" I asked. Alric was already digging deeper. "It's a replacement project." Tenor's mouth went dry. "For us?" "Not just us," Alric said. "For the whole fleet." I read the documents myself. Project Serenity, a joint initiative between Earth Command, select factions of the Council, and private contractors, designed to phase out the Revenant fleet over a 20-cycle plan. Goals listed in clinical, heartless terms. Replace independent command leadership with loyalty-assured clones. Reduce political unpredictability within human military divisions. Streamline integration into galactic cooperative defense structure. Streamline. Loyalty assured. Unpredictability. They weren't afraid of war. They were afraid we remembered. They wanted soldiers without ghosts, without memory. Without justice. They wanted dogs in armor who followed orders without asking why, and worse, they were already building them. We didn't destroy the station, not yet. We left behind one gift, a data siphon that pulled every file out of the core and fed it back to our fleet's deep vaults. Let them keep thinking we never came. Let them get comfortable. Because this war, it was no longer us against the galaxy. It was humans against what humanity was becoming. Back aboard Vigil's End, I called Brandt into the war room. He didn't say anything when I showed him the files, just stared. Silent. Stone. "They're replacing us," I said. He nodded once. "Then we replace them first." That was all it took. The purge began slowly. Quiet terminations, false accidents, shuttle malfunctions, disappearances during jumps. Any Earth Command official with confirmed links to Serenity was flagged. Some we interrogated. Others were too risky to keep alive. Senka hesitated. "You're talking about killing our own leadership," she said. I nodded. She looked at me, hard. "And who decides who gets a bullet and who doesn't?" I met her eyes. Me, until someone puts one in mine. She left without another word. The rest of the fleet held firm, because now it wasn't about survival, it was about identity. They tried to erase us from history. Now they wanted to erase us from ourselves. A month passed. Then 2. Earth Command stayed quiet. No official retaliation. No messages, no denials. That meant one thing. They were still building. And then, we lost contact with Delos 4, a human world, loyal to the fleet, one of our strongest supporters, gone, no distress call. No debris, just silence, like someone had erased it from space. The first footage arrived 2 days later, smuggled out by a survivor who'd jumped during the initial assault. It showed black ships, human design, but sleeker, colder, unmarked. They dropped from orbit and vaporized the comm towers in under 30 seconds. Ground units followed, men in reinforced armor. No insignia, no emotion. They weren't council troops, and they weren't ours. They were Serenity, and they didn't just kill. They executed, systematically, silently, without remorse. And suddenly it was clear. The war we started wasn't ending. It was evolving. I called the last full council of the fleet. Commanders, admirals, old warriors, new rebels. Every last one of them summoned aboard Vigil's End. I showed them the footage, the clones, the plans, the files. I didn't ask for their opinions. I gave them the truth. They're not just coming for our power. They're coming for our memory, our pain, everything that makes us human. Silence held the room like a vice. Then Admiral Drest stood. "They want a new kind of human," he said, voice gravel thick. "Sanitized, controlled, obedient." "Then we give them one," someone else growled. "Just not the one they asked for." A few nodded. I looked around the room. From this moment on, we are no longer bound to Earth Command. We are the true line of human blood, memory, honor, vengeance. We will not be forgotten. We will not be replaced. And we will not forgive. And so the Purge became a war, not just against the Council, not just against the stars, but against the machine Earth built in our name. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were a reminder that the galaxy tried to bury us, and we dug our way out with a blade in hand. They called us traitors. The media networks, still chained to Earth Command, pumped out the headlines like poison. Fleet Commander declares war on Earth. Rogue human faction seizes military control. Terrorists or patriots? Revenant fleet splinters humanity? Funny how quick they flipped. 1 year ago, they begged us to protect the borders. Now we were the villains in their perfectly curated propaganda stream. But I didn't care about headlines. We had the truth. And more importantly, we had the fleet. When the first clone assault hit the outer moons of Athar's ring, it wasn't a battle. It was a message. They didn't just kill. They made sure it looked clean, sanitized, surgical. Bodies stacked and zipped into glossy containment units like this was a medical operation instead of a slaughter. But they slipped. One of their ops squads, too confident, too fast, got ambushed by a scout unit of ours before their scramblers could wipe the logs. The feed we recovered showed a briefing. A man, dressed in Earth Command colors. Real high up. Official. He was giving orders to the clone strike force. And his words were as clear as the betrayal. "The fleet is obsolete. We need loyalty, not legacy. End them all." No hesitation. No sorrow. Just a surgical smile as he ordered the erasure of everything we'd fought to keep alive. The next day, we painted his face across every signal relay we could hack. We let the outer colonies see the man giving the kill order. Let the people remember who gave the betrayal a voice. They stopped calling us rebels after that. Now, we were the ones protecting them. It didn't take long for the first full engagement. Juno Theta, a mid-sized colony loyal to the Revenant cause, came under direct assault from Serenity units. Hundreds of clone troopers, Earth-branded cruisers with ghost crews and polished insignias. We answered with fire. I led the charge myself. No more hiding behind strategy. This time I wanted them to see me. The man they thought they could erase. The battle started with EMP bursts, knocked out every long-range sensor in the quadrant. Serenity troops liked to fight blind, force chaos. then swarm through the static. But we'd learned from them. We adapted. Our ships ran cold, shadowed. We let them land. Let them think the colony was wide open. And when they deployed their first wave, we turned the dirt into fire. Underground cannons burst from beneath the streets. Fragmentation fields collapsed their ranks in minutes. Our soldiers swarmed from hidden bunkers, trained to fight not like soldiers, but like animals backed into a corner. The Serenity clones didn't flinch. But that was the problem. They didn't feel, didn't adapt, didn't think. And that made them predictable. We tore through the first 2 battalions in under an hour. The third held out longer. Better tactics, smarter command code. But I was done with codes. I cornered one of their lieutenants in the ruins of a church. He was human. Mostly. You could still see the structure of a man underneath all that synthetic reinforcement. He didn't bleed red, didn't scream, didn't beg. Just looked at me with cold, machine-fed indifference. "You've already lost," he said. I raised my blade. "Tell me how." "Because you're fighting for a memory, and we are the future." I didn't reply. I just cut out his throat module and let him choke on the silence he'd created. After the victory, we didn't celebrate. Too many dead, too many more to come. But there was something new in the air. Belief. Not in me, not even in the cause, in themselves. In the idea that what we were doing wasn't just resistance, it was inheritance. Back aboard Vigil's End, Senka found me watching the feed of the wreckage. "You keep going out there," she said. "You're not going to come back." I didn't answer. "You know what they'll do if they catch you alive." "I know." "You still think we can win this?" I turned to face her. "That's the wrong question. Then what's the right one?" I took a breath. "What do we become if we don't?" The split in humanity grew wider with every cycle. On one side, Earth Command and the Serenity Project. Artificial control, memory wipes, sterile perfection. A new vision of humanity with no past, no pain, no ghosts. On the other, us. The fleet, the veterans, the colonies, human beings with scars who still remembered why we bled in the first place. And now, it wasn't just survival. It was ideology. The turning point came at Nemea Station. Earth Command sent a peace envoy. 5 diplomats in white armor, unarmed, clean, polished. They called it a chance for negotiation. We agreed to the meeting. But when they arrived, we already knew the truth. Our deep code analysts had found the bug inside the envoy's comms, a neuromind worm programmed to infiltrate and shut down military-grade AI protocols on contact. It wasn't a peace offer. It was a suicide switch. They wanted to disable our fleets from within. So we did what had to be done. We executed the envoy on live feed. No more diplomacy, no more illusions, no more pretending we were one species anymore. After that, the Council pulled out entirely. Not from Earth Command, they still supported their puppet army, but from pretending neutrality. Ships started attacking our supply lines under pirate protocol. Black Ops teams targeted our commanders. We adapted. We struck back, harder, smarter. We used their own tactics against them, EMPs, shadows, misinformation. And slowly, something terrifying happened. We started winning. But victory doesn't come clean. It comes soaked in the things you hoped you'd never become. Brant changed. He used to fight with anger, with fire. Now, he fought with calm precision, with ice. He no longer hesitated when we received intel on Serenity sympathizers in neutral colonies. He just signed off on the strikes. When Senka questioned a decision, one that vaporized a border town rumored to be sheltering clone agents, Brant didn't even blink. "They made their choice," he said. "They were civilians," Senka argued. "They were collaborators." That was the first time I saw her doubt. Not in him, but in all of it. We were winning. But at what cost? One night, I found her alone in the observation deck. She didn't turn when I walked in. "We're becoming them," she whispered. "No," I said, but I didn't believe it. She looked at me finally. Eyes rimmed red. A future where we erase the past, or a future where the past never stops bleeding. That's all we've got left now, isn't it? I couldn't answer, because maybe that's all that remained of humanity now. Memory. Or control. And then we received a message from Earth. Not Serenity, not the Council, not a clone, a human voice. From deep inside Earth Command Headquarters. It was a child. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her eyes were wide, scared, and she whispered 4 words that stopped my heart cold. "They're building something else." Then the feed cut out. We traced the signal. A deep core installation under the crust of Earth. Shielded, hidden. Codename. Promise. No files, no leaks, no details. Only one note left in the metadata. A phrase repeated 3 times. "They don't need us anymore. They don't need us anymore. They don't need us anymore." Whatever promise was, it wasn't for peace. It was for replacing us completely, not just soldiers, all of us. I called the fleet, every ship, every commander, every outpost. "This ends now," I said. "We go to Earth, not to destroy it, not to rule it, but to remind it. To remind them we are still here. To remind them that humanity does not begin in a lab. It does not march on programming. It is not loyal by design. Humanity is blood, and memory, and pain. And we do not go quietly." There was no speech, no rally cry, no flag-waving broadcast to unify the fleet. When the command went out, it was simple. Coordinates, Sol system, target, Earth. Priority, red. Mission, retrieve or neutralize Project Promise. That was it. No politics, no pretense. The war had come home. The Revenant fleet had never been this unified. Every ship, every surviving commander, every outer colony with a working engine, they all answered. Not because I ordered them to, because they knew what was at stake. If Promise succeeded, we wouldn't just lose the war. We'd lose the right to exist at all. Brant stood beside me as the vigil's end entered hyperspace. He didn't speak for a long time, just stared at the star map, Earth glowing like a cold wound in the distance. Finally, he said, "We should have done this a long time ago." I shook my head. "Not like this." He looked at me. "Then how?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. There was no clean version of this war left, no noble strike, no righteous last stand. Only the hope that our worst sins might still be more human than their perfect order. As we broke through the final transit lane, we got our first full scan of the system. Earth had changed. Orbit was packed with automated defense satellites, thousands, layered in orbital rings, connected by a web of quantum-linked AI command cores. Civilian space traffic was gone. The moon had been converted into a weapons platform. Mars had gone dark. Venus was off limits. And in low orbit, right above the old Terran equator, sat the station. Promise. Not a lab, not a bunker, a fortress, black as obsidian, lined with hexagonal panels pulsing with pale blue veins of energy. It was bigger than anything we'd seen them build before. Even the AI in my ear, normally cold and tactical, hesitated. Tactical viability approaching 0.31% for direct assault without casualties exceeding 85%. I shut the interface down. This wasn't about percentages anymore. We hit the outer defense ring fast. The Crucible and Black Meridian opened with synchronized EMP bursts, frying the satellites closest to our vector. Shadow frigates slipped through gaps in the grid and began cutting comms relays. Drest's battlecruisers flanked the formation, drawing fire away from our core fleet. It wasn't clean. We lost the Kepler-9 within the first 10 minutes. Hit by a kinetic slug round so massive it split the ship from bow to engine in a flash of white plasma and hull fragments. 300 gone. Just like that. But we didn't break. We pushed. We breached orbit at 3,200 kilometers. Promise opened fire. Not missiles, not lasers. Something worse. They called it a sentinel lance, a beam of directed dark matter distortion, thin as a needle and as fast as light. It didn't explode on contact. It imploded. The Vothrian, one of our oldest warships, was hit first. It folded inward like paper. A whisper of a ship, gone before anyone could scream. "Jesus," muttered Tenor over comms. "They've upgraded," Senka said. "They've abandoned restraint," I replied. We needed a breach point. We couldn't fight the whole station from orbit. So we made a hole. A small specialized strike team, me, Tenor, Senka, Alric, and 4 commandos, took one of the Vigil's End's boarding spears. A high-speed, reinforced projectile ship. No return system, no shields, just a hull wrapped in heat sinks and a navigation AI set to one thing: puncture the goddamn wall. They launched us like a bullet. The ride in was chaos. Atmosphere boiled around the nose. The AI rerouted control every second to compensate for the station's auto-defense systems. We took 2 glancing hits. One scorched the left stabilizer, the other fried Alric's comms rig. Then, impact. A thunderous, bone-rattling crack as we tore through the outer layer of promise and slammed into one of the internal docking tubes. Metal screamed. Lights burst. Alarms howled. But we were inside. Alive. Tenor was up first, already firing at the first wave of defenders pouring into the chamber. Not clones, not guards, drones. They moved like insects. Multi-limbed, fast, no emotion, no blood, just machines built to exterminate. Senka flanked left, planting EMP charges on the bulkheads. 2 drones shorted out instantly. I covered right, laying down suppressive fire as Alric tried to hack into the local nav system. "I need 60 seconds, he shouted. "You've got 20, Tenor barked. We made it through the breach corridor into the inner sanctum. And what we found there, even now, I still hear it in my sleep. They weren't just replacing us, they were duplicating us. Rows upon rows of tanks filled the chamber, each one holding a living, breathing replica of someone in the fleet. Our commanders, our captains, even our dead. Alric stared at one tank, silent. It was him. Younger. Sharper. Wearing a council uniform. "What the hell is this?" he whispered. Senka ran scans. "They're not just clones," she said. "They've integrated AI cognitive threads. These are programmable people." Tenor shot one of the tanks. The body inside convulsed. "They're building humans like weapons," he said. "Mass-produced, disposable." And then the voice came. Not over speakers, not through AI, in our heads. You could have joined us. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't cold. It was familiar. My own voice. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Same face, same scars, same eyes, but no soul, just a copy. "Who the hell?" Tenor raised his gun. "Don't," I said. I needed to hear this. The copy, me, looked calm, clean, precise. "Why fight chaos?" he said. "Why cling to suffering when we can be perfect? You're not human." "I'm the next phase of it," I stepped forward. "And I'm the last phase you'll ever see." He smiled and lunged. The fight was brutal. He moved like me, thought like me, predicted every feint, every tactic. But there was one thing he didn't understand. Pain. He didn't know how to fight through it, didn't know how to make it fuel. So when he broke 2 of my ribs, I let the pain take me, and I broke his spine. We rigged the core with fusion charges. Alric planted a virus to fry their replication data. Senka locked down their backup relays. When the explosion tore through Promise 30 minutes later, it lit the Earth's sky like a second sunrise. The entire system felt it. The birthplace of humanity saw the future die in fire. Back on Vigil's end, we watched the debris fall. None of us spoke. Not even Brandt. Because we all knew what we'd done. We hadn't just destroyed a station. We'd killed the idea that humanity could be perfected. And in doing so, we saved what was left of the real thing. The war didn't end that day. But it changed. Because now Earth Command had no more replacements, no more dreams of programmable obedience. Just us, the broken, the angry, the human. They didn't fire back. After we destroyed Project Promise, Earth Command went silent. Not just comms, everything. Satellites went dead. Defense arrays powered down. Drone fleets drifted lifeless in orbit like metal corpses waiting to fall. We waited for retaliation. We thought they'd launch a last strike, some final act of desperation. But it never came. Instead, they surrendered. The message was short. No speeches, no ceremonies, no generals begging for terms. Just a flickering signal from Earth's old UN command tower, half of it crumbling, the rest covered in dust and ivy. One voice, a woman, civilian, older, wrinkled, hair tied back in a gray bun, no rank, no badge. Her words were the only ones left that mattered. There's no one left to give you orders. They all left the day you came back, or they hid underground, still clinging to their delusions. This isn't a victory call. This is a surrender of silence. If there's anything left of us worth saving, it's yours now. We didn't cheer. We didn't march down corridors with fists raised or paint our emblems on broken walls. We just stood there, still, listening to a voice asking to be forgotten. I remember walking alone through the ruins of old Geneva, where the Alliance once signed humanity's entry into the Council's service, back when we thought we were climbing into greatness. All I found was rusted metal and old flags soaked in ash. I walked through that silence like it was a cathedral. The ghosts of what we used to be whispered through the broken streets. Not to haunt me, to ask a question I wasn't ready to answer. Now what? Brandt met me on the bridge of Vigil's End that evening. Earth Command's gone, he said. The Council's fractured. Half the colonies are claiming independence. I said nothing. He stepped closer. They want to know what comes next. I turned away from the viewport, looked him in the eye. You tell them this. We didn't fight to become rulers. We didn't fight to sit on thrones made of bones. We fought because we remembered what it felt like to be erased. He nodded. And now? Now, I said, we make sure no one forgets again. What came next wasn't empire. It wasn't peace either. It was something older, more honest, a reckoning. We didn't dissolve Earth Command. We left its buildings standing, left its halls empty, let people see the ruin of what obedience became. We let them walk through the places where orders were signed that led to slaughters. Let them read the documents on the walls. The blueprints for clones. The lies printed in policy. The human faces turned into barcodes and numbers. We didn't burn it down. We preserved it, not as a shrine, as a warning. Senka took the outer colonies. She didn't want power, just truth. She created the Memoriam Accord, a system of education, military and civilian alike, dedicated to cataloging the war, the betrayal, the faces behind every decision that led us here. For the first time in human history, we told the whole story, without censorship. Even the ugly parts, even the things we did, especially the things we did. Because memory without truth isn't memory, it's mythology. Tenor never returned to command. He built a graveyard on Erebus Prime, not for the bodies we lost, many were never recovered, but for the names. 12,000 steel plates, each etched by hand. No ranks, no medals, just names. One by one, Alric disappeared. Some say he went to hunt down the last of the Serenity Rogue AI clusters. Others believe he was never really free of the system they made him in. Either way, we never saw him again. But the virus he wrote, the one that shattered Promise's neural network, became the base of our new defense systems. He gave us a mind that would never forget who it served. And Brant? He stayed at my side, but not as a second in command, as a brother. We fought so long, we'd forgotten what life looked like without a target. So we started building something else. Not cities, not capitals, communities where veterans could raise children without teaching them the taste of vengeance, where memory wasn't a burden. It was an inheritance. As for me, I walked away. Eventually. Not out of shame, not even out of grief. But because I had nothing left to kill. The last time I saw Earth, I stood on the edge of the old Terran Ridge, overlooking a field of ash and growing green. The sky was clear. The war was over. The world wasn't healed. It never would be. But it had stopped bleeding. They asked me to lead again, to run the new union, to rebuild. I refused. I was forged in fire, I told them, not made to hold hands around a table. What should we call this new age? They asked. I looked up at the stars, saw the empty blackness we once rose through with blood on our hands, and I said, call it what it is, remembrance. Now, years later, I sit beneath the ruins of the first Earth monument we ever built. It was meant to honor the Council. Now it's cracked in half. Fitting. A boy visits sometimes, maybe 12, eyes sharp, hair messy. Looks at the ruins like he hears voices in the stone. He asked me once, was it true what they did to us? I didn't lie. They betrayed us, tried to replace us, tried to write us out of history. And what did we do? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I wanted him to understand the weight of it. We reminded them we existed. He visits every month. One day he brought a notebook, said he wanted to write it all down, every part of it. The names, the pain, the rage, the victories that felt like wounds, the defeats that changed nothing, the silence between explosions. He asked if he could call it a story. I shook my head. Call it a warning. So, here it is. A war that started with a debt. A galaxy that forgot who saved it. A species that refused to be replaced. And a story that ends not in peace, but in memory. Because in the end, the stars did shudder. Not from fire, not from war, but from the realization that humans remember, even when no one else wants them to, especially then.